Welcome, everyone, to our second show of the Bracket Report, a production of Delphi Bracketology, brought to you by Coca-Cola Bottling of Kokomo. I'm your host, Brian Tonsoni. Joining me today is our editor, Cade Nelson, junior editor, and Nikita Lear, a sophomore, second-year member of the group who has done a lot of writing for us as well in her 2 years. Remember, you can follow our work on our website, delphibracketology.com. Also follow us on Twitter and interact with us. The Twitter handle is @DelphiBracket. So we're just going to jump right in and talk about the teams in the state of Indiana. And Nikita, the Purdue Boilermakers are up first.
Right now, they are a 2 seed. I mean, they could be a 1 seed with their record. They're 3-1 in quad 1 wins and 2-1 in quad 2 wins with a total record of 13-2. 2 of those wins and 2 of those losses being in conference, and they have a great net at 8.
And Purdue had a tough loss to Wisconsin, but they're doing really well. Indiana is the team I'm going to talk about, and they are back in the tournament after being out. They had a really good week. They suffered a loss at Penn State, but responded by beating your Ohio State Buckeyes, Cade, which was a quad 1 win, and then they followed that up with beating Minnesota. The issue for Indiana is they're going to have to get some road wins. They're on the road for 2 games this week. Those are important. They have yet to have a true road win. They only have 1 neutral win. Cade?
So the next team is Notre Dame. For us, right now they're out of the bracket with only 1 win in quad 1, and they have a quad 3 loss, so that obviously doesn't help them. Some of their recent wins are over Georgia Tech, North Carolina, and Pitt. That win over North Carolina wound up to be a quad 2 win, but that could change if North Carolina starts playing better. They move up to a quad 1, and then that finally gives Notre Dame another quad 1 win to work with. So they have a 86 net right now, so that's not really good for them, but a 50 strength of schedule will help them to play in some bigger games and build a better resume in ACC play. And like last week, they need to keep up wins for a shot at the tournament.
You got Butler next, right?
Yep. Butler, for us, is kind of in the same scenario as Notre Dame. They're 1-5 in quad 1, so obviously they've had chances to get these quality wins that they need, but obviously their lack of wins in the quad 1 category is the reason why they're out, as well as their extremely high net of 136.
So right now we have Purdue and Indiana in the tournament. Notre Dame is a team on the rise, but not close yet, and Butler's really a team that is behind the 8 ball. So we rank college basketball teams from 1 through 68 each week. We produce a seed list, which tells what teams are seeded on what seed lines, 1 seeds, 2 seeds, etc. We also produce a bracket where we try to match up the actual games that will be played along with the location for those games. And this changes every week based on wins and losses. And so this week, there was a lot of movement in the bracket up and down. So we're going to take a look at teams that are moving up and teams that are moving down. Cade and Nikita have this covered. Cade, what team is moving up for you?
The team that's moving up for me is Auburn. They have a 14-1 record with a 34 strength of schedule and a net of 6. So you obviously want to be in that single-digit net, which means you're playing really well. And it also is shown that they're playing well through their 3-1 quad 1 record. And that 1 loss was against UConn on a neutral court in double overtime. So the thing with Auburn and a bunch of these 1 seeds right now is that there's a common theme in the amount of quad 1 wins that they have. And so with all these quad 1 wins, that also shows that they don't really have any bad losses either. So Auburn has done everything they need to do to become and stay a number 1 seed. And a notable win they just had was over 14-1 LSU. But the big thing for them is a couple of their games coming up against Alabama and Kentucky that might prove to be a challenge for them.
And Nikita, what team is moving up for you?
For me, that would be LSU. They have a net rank of 4, and they're 2-1 in their conference. And, I mean, they're just doing amazing. Like, they're 4-1 with quad 1 wins, with 2 quad 2 wins, and no losses there. They have a great strength, not the best strength of schedule, but it's 56. I mean, it could be better, but, I mean, I think they would get better as they keep playing. They're even doing better than Gonzaga right now, so.
Yeah, the SEC is a conference to watch. If you're out there and a college basketball fan, watch the SEC because they're really on the rise. And you got a couple teams here in Auburn and LSU that are moving up. We have a SEC team that's moving down, but not much in the next segment. And so watch those teams. And now that brings us to the teams that are moving down. Cade, what team is moving down our bracket for you?
Yeah, so like you said, we have a SEC team here in Tennessee. They don't have any bad losses with a 2-4 quad one record and an 11 net, but the fact that they haven't been able to turn any of those quad one games into bigger wins is what is hurting them right now. So some of those losses didn't happen too long ago, as they came from teams like Alabama and LSU. And like I said before, those losses aren't bad, but when the teams on the seed line below you are able to win games, then you start to see some shifting and flip-flopping on the seed lines and in the bracket.
And Nikita, what team is moving down our brackets for you?
For me, that'd be Iowa. Right now they're 11-4 overall, but they have no quad one wins. They've lost to Purdue, Illinois, Iowa State, and Wisconsin. And they're also only 1-3 in their conference.
Yep.
They have a terrible strength of schedule. It's 241, so they really don't have anything going for them right now.
The strength of schedule, you brought that up a couple times, is a tiebreaker. When you have teams in the same seed area as these teams, it can be a reason to move a team up or down based on their strength of schedule. So since our show last week, we've had some movement in the Indiana teams. Purdue is still around the 1 and 2 seed line. Indiana has moved into the bracket. And then we've had some teams nationally move up and down. In our next segment, we'll talk about how we make those decisions on the 1 and 2 seed line. So we share some of our decision-making process in the next segment here on the Bracket Report. Welcome back to the Bracket Report, sponsored by Coca-Cola Bottling of Kokomo. I am the host, Brian Tonsoni, along with Cade Nelson and Nikita Lear. It is now time to dive into the main reason we are here, and that's brackets. The top 4 seed lines. There's some movement in the top 4 seeds line since we were last on the show. The best teams in the country had quite an interesting week. And so what qualifies for the 1 seed line and the 2 seed line? All of these teams are really good basketball teams. And so we have the following teams that we believe all have a resume for a potential number 1 seed. Baylor, obviously, is the best team in the country. And then you have Gonzaga, Arizona, Auburn, Purdue, Kansas, and LSU. And as you can see on the screen, the records are all very, very similar. So how do you separate these teams 1 through 7? Cade, I'm going to go to you. Baylor is a no-brainer, so we already have them locked into the number 1 seed. What team sticks out for you most in the remaining 6 teams as a team most likely to be a number 1 seed?
I already talked about Auburn. I think they're definitely a good candidate for being a number 1 seed. But like Nikita said, LSU, the fact that they're a team that has a 14-1 record, and then Arizona with only 1 quad 1 win, I think that might be a topic of discussion in a meeting for Arizona to drop down and maybe move LSU up.
So, Cade, you bring up a really good point. When we're looking at our spreadsheet here, Auburn is 14-1, LSU is 14-1. Auburn has a 6 net, LSU has a 4 net. So those are comparison points. LSU is 4-1 in quad 1, LSU is 3-1, or Auburn is 3-1. So the question becomes, how do you differentiate these teams? I'm going to go back to Nikita, strength of schedule. We have Auburn as a 1 seed because they have 7 quad 1 and 2 wins versus 6 for LSU, and the strength of schedule is 34-56 in favor of Auburn, and non-conference schedule 95-231 for LSU. So I think Auburn, with very close resumes, that tiebreaker between those 2 teams. Nikita, as you look at these teams, you already talked a little bit about Purdue. They have as many quad 1 wins as Gonzaga and Auburn, and then you have Kansas right behind it. Is there another team, if we've put Baylor and Auburn in, who would be the next team for you to be a number 1 seed?
Honestly, I think it'd probably be LSU. Yeah, they don't have the best strength of schedule at the moment, but they have 4 quad 1 wins and only 1 loss in quad 1. Also, they're 14-1 and 2-1 in conference, so it would just be an awesome boost for them.
And they have the net to support Nikita there. They have the number 4 net. What we have found, and this is not absolute, the net is not a scoreboard. You don't put number 1 in the number 1 slot and number 2 if their resume doesn't match up. But traditionally, the first 8, the 2 seed lines, first seed line and the second seed line, are all single-digit net in some form. So we currently have it 1, 2, 5, 6 in the net and 8, 9, 4, 7. And Nikita makes a good point to move the 4 net team possibly up. For me, I still think Gonzaga is a number 1 seed. They are 12-2. They are 3-2 in quad 1. The issue for Gonzaga is going to be in their conference, can they get enough quality wins to add to that total? In the past, teams like Gonzaga and Houston have been given a little bit of credit that they don't get the opportunities that the Baylors and the Big Ten and the ACC and those schools get. So I would think Gonzaga comes in. So when we look at Arizona, we currently have them in, and I'm going to get each one of your opinions on this. Arizona is 12-1. They are 2-1 on the road, 1 quad 1 win, but are undefeated in the other quads. And they are the number 2 ranked net team. Do they deserve a number 1 seed, or because the other teams all have at least 2 or 3 and LSU has 4 quad 1 wins, should Arizona, despite the number 2 overall ranking, drop down, in your opinion? Nikita, we'll start with you.
Yes, I think they should. Like Mr. Tonsoni said, they only have 1 quad 1 win. Everyone else has a lot more, and they're only 12-1.
Cade, your thoughts on Arizona? Should they remain a number 1 or drop down to a number 2?
I think there's definitely a strong debate here for Arizona to stay at a number 1 because of that 2 net. But as you said before, both seed lines 1 and 2 have single-digit nets, so I don't think there's necessarily a problem with dropping them down, but I think they definitely have to stay in the 1 and 2 seed line.
Yeah, there's no doubt Arizona's 1 or 2. And here's what we talk about on Thursday morning. So if you ever wonder what the Bracketology Club, we have these discussions. So if we all agree that Arizona is a little light, even though they have a number 2 seed, that number 2 net, that they should drop down, then the question is posed in our meetings, who do you replace them with? Who do you move up from the 2 seed line? Nikita's already mentioned that she believes LSU. I'm going to go with, that's where your Purdue fans would really like that, because maybe Purdue moves up with 3 quad 1 wins and 2 quad 2 wins, 5-2, and a number 8 seed. Maybe Kansas, who also has 5. But it's going to be interesting to see tomorrow morning, or not tomorrow morning, Thursday morning when we have our group meeting, what the consensus of 16 members of our group think about moving Arizona down and moving either Purdue, Kansas, or LSU. Cade, who would it be for you to move up to replace Arizona if we chose to do that?
I think definitely the number 1 spot might be LSU, but there is definitely a strong debate to be made for Purdue as well, just because the fact that they have 3 quad 1 wins and Arizona only has 1. But the thing that's shaky for me on Purdue is the fact that they have a quad 2 loss, and no one else on the 1C line right now has that quad 2 loss, and especially their net as well. So I think it might be LSU, but Purdue is definitely there as well.
One of the things we'll share with you as we get going, too, is when things are tight like this, we go into what we call a team sheet, and we look at who they beat and what were the actual numbers. A number 5 win in quad 1 is better than a number 34 quad 1 win. So we'll really get down into the details as we progress towards March to break some of these ties. Right now, we are predominantly number-based in our selection, but we do look at some of the heavy details within that. So that's our number 1 seed line. That gives us 7 teams. That's all the teams on the seed line 1, and then 3 of the teams on the seed line 2. And so now there becomes a discussion where there's a 2 seed line debate. We think there are 3 teams. Villanova, 11-4 and 3-4 in quad 1. Right now is our 8 seed, 8 overall seed, and our last number 2 seed. And you have USC, who's undefeated, and you have Michigan State, who has 4 quad 1 wins. Nikita, of those 3 teams, which team would you argue needs to be the last number 2 seed?
I would definitely say USC because they're undefeated. They do have a bad strength of schedule, though, and they have a 12 net, but like you said earlier, 12 net doesn't really matter in number-wise. So, yeah.
Cade, which team for you, Villanova, USC, or Michigan State?
I think you might just have to leave Villanova there for right now, just because their net is 7. And I really think the only thing holding Michigan State and USC out is their net, being that it's double-digit. But then you see on our 3 seed line that Houston is there with a 3 net. So then that's where you start to compare these teams that are lower than the teams you're looking at, and you kind of think, well, if this team has a 3 net and there's teams above them with a 9 net or something like that, then you have to start thinking about, well, maybe you can get away with moving a 15 net up to the 2 seed line. And so Villanova's biggest thing right now is the fact that they have those 4 quad 1 losses, which really isn't bad for them, but it just shows that there's teams below them that have won those games and that are in consideration to be moved up with them.
And the thing, if you are going to argue Villanova, is their quality of schedule. Their strength of schedule is the 3rd toughest schedule overall compared to USC's 233. It's hard to put a team 11-4 over a team that is 13-0, but you have to, look at the overall resume. Villanova has no losses in quads 2, 3, and 4, and they've played a really, really tough schedule, and that will be interesting because I think USC and Villanova and even Michigan State can climb in to that number 2 seed line. So that's an example of our 2 seed line debate. And then here's the last one that we'll share in our main segment is Duke was the 2nd best team in our bracket, and now we have them down on a 4. Nikita, you are a fan of the Duke Blue Devils. Do you think that's fair that they lose 1 home game to Miami and they drop all the way to a 4 seed?
I think it's completely fair. They have a net of 13, and they have one quad 1 loss and 2 quad 1 wins. But yeah, they lost to Miami at home in their court. That should have been an easy game for them to win.
Cade, your thoughts on Duke?
I'm kind of with Nikita. I think it's totally okay that they're down there right now with the fact that they have a quad 3 loss and no other team on any seed line above them has that quad 3 loss. So where they're at right now is fine. But then you look at their net, and it's kind of shaky with the fact that you have 20 nets over them. But especially with their strength of schedule, it being a 128, I think where they're at right now is completely fine.
It was shocking to me to see it fall out that way when we put the numbers together every 2 days in a new spreadsheet, that Duke really probably, compared to other teams, is a 4 seed. You have Houston with a 3 net, 14-2 above them. You have Iowa State 23 net that has 5 quad 1 wins. You have Wisconsin with 8 quad 1 and 2 wins versus Duke's 3. And so maybe we had them misplaced last week that they weren't a number 1 seed and number 2. But that's how things can change because the comparisons matter. It wasn't just that loss was so bad it dropped them so many spots, but the other teams around them, and that's why the good teams had an interesting week. So that brings us to a quick bubble talk before we end this segment here. Last 4 teams in: Marquette, Memphis, Creighton, and St. Louis. First 4 teams out: VCU, Virginia Tech, TCU, and Texas A&M, and that changes all the time. And we have similar debates about these teams as well. So we're in the middle of the season in college basketball. The resumes of the teams are starting to take hold, and as they continue to build, there'll be less movement because teams will solidify their spots. But each week presents new comparisons between teams, resulting in interesting moves up and down the bracket. But stay with us here after the break, and we'll discuss the Big Ten in detail, and we'll share with you some games to watch here on the Bracket Report.
The drive, the take, fouled, and it goes!
Lobbing it to the back of the end zone. They're going to say it's a touchdown.
Left foot gets through. Goal for Vargas. Hamilton will score.
You are watching the Bracket Report, a production of Delphi Bracketology, sponsored by Coca-Cola Bottling of Kokomo. It's now time for some Big Ten talk, and Cade, will go to you. What teams are safely in the Big Ten Conference as of right now?
The teams we have safely in are Purdue, Michigan State, Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Illinois.
And of those teams, Wisconsin is really making some noise with their wins and that win at Purdue. Illinois was down early, coming back. But I think those teams are safely in, and we mean safely in as of right now. They got to keep winning games. A big run of losses, and these teams can fall a little bit lower. Nikita, the Big Ten also has some teams that should be in, but have a lot of work yet to do to make sure that happens. Who is in that category?
The teams that should be in are Indiana, Iowa, and Minnesota.
With Minnesota being the shakiest team, they've lost a couple games. They had a big win at Michigan, but Michigan struggled. Their net is now 68. That is dangerously close to falling out. We have them on the 11 seed line, and not quite the last 4 out, but Minnesota needs to get back on the winning ways if they're going to stay in. The Big Ten looks like a 7-team for sure bid, maybe 8. Some bubble teams, Northwestern and Michigan, still aren't capable, but they've got to turn things around quick. Michigan's in the middle of a COVID pause, so they're not gaining any ground at this time. Any of those teams that you'd like to address? We've already talked a lot about the Big Ten. Cade, you okay with your Ohio State Buckeyes?
Yeah, for right now, I think after the loss they just had, they'll definitely need to pick a win back up after Wisconsin just beat them. But, with the Ohio State losing like this, I think where they're at right now in our bracket is perfectly fine and where it should be.
And so that brings us to games to watch. Every game has bracket impact, some more than others. We're going to try to bring you 9 games here before we sign off. Cade, your first game to watch.
So I kind of saved it because I want to talk about Ohio State at Wisconsin right now. They both have the same amount of quad 1 and 2 losses, so they're pretty similar teams. With both of them being a 4 seed, this game might not cause a drastic shift in the standings, but it'll definitely be a solid win for either team to kind of build their resume.
Nikita, your first game to watch.
I have BYU at Gonzaga. BYU is 12-3, but they have no quad 1 wins, so this would very much so boost them. Gonzaga is 12-2, but they have 3 quad 1 wins, so I don't think it could hurt them if BYU beats them, but I don't think it would really matter.
Huge game for BYU. For me, Indiana at Iowa. Indiana needs to win on the road. They've gotten back in the bracket. They've got 3 quad 1 and 2 wins. They're in right now. A loss isn't going to drop them out necessarily, but they need road wins. Back to you, Cade. Next game.
I have Texas at Iowa State. So for Texas, it would be a win that would finally get them a win in the quad 1 column, and this might also lead to a shift with some teams on the seed line above them, like Tennessee, who's trending down right now, as I talked about earlier. And especially if they drop a game, if Tennessee drops a game to Alabama or Kentucky, it would open a spot for Texas on the 5 seed line if they're able to pull off this road win.
Nikita, your next game.
Mine is Tennessee at Kentucky. It's just a seedless game pretty much. Tennessee's 10-4, Kentucky's 12-3. Either way, it could either shift the schedule.
Those seedless games are fun because no one really loses, but the team that wins gets probably a boost. For me, Creighton at Xavier, we've talked a lot already in the first 2 segments or 2 shows about the Big East. That is going to be a huge game. Creighton needs it more than Xavier. Xavier wants to move up and make sure they're not just in that 6-5 range. Cade, your last game.
My last game is BYU at San Francisco, and we kind of already talked about BYU and just the fact that any win for them right now is definitely a big boost. And I have this as a potential flip-flop game here, as seeing that San Francisco is a seed line lower than BYU with a similar spreadsheet of wins and losses. But especially if BYU, a team with 3 quad 2 losses and a record of 0-0 in quad 1, if they are able to pull off this win against San Francisco, it would definitely help them out. I'm not sure if it would be a quad 1 win for them, but it would definitely create room for discussion in a Thursday meeting about whether a team like BYU should move up or down.
And Nikita, your last game to watch.
My last game is UConn at Providence. Again, it's just a seedless game. UConn's 10-4 and Providence 14-2.
That Big East, because I'm going to finish with the Big East in mind. So we're telling you to watch the Big East. Seton Hall at Marquette. Marquette is a team that has a lot of losses, but they have some good wins. They need to keep getting good wins so they could avoid that fear on Selection Sunday of being left out. But the Big East every day is a great matchup. So those are some of the games. There's a lot of games on between now and Sunday. Watch basketball. They have great effects on the bracket. But that'll do it for this episode of the Bracket Report. Thanks and appreciation to ISC Sports Network for hosting our show. Thanks to Coca-Cola Bottling of Kokomo for sponsoring our show. And please contact us on Twitter with any questions or topics you would like for us to cover as we proceed with the show. Follow us on our website at delphibracketology.com for more information and updated brackets. I'm Brian Tonsoni for Cade Nelson and Nikita Lear. We thank you for watching, and until next week, may your favorite team win games, win quad 1 and 2 games, and win them on the road.
McCulling in time. Oh, no! It's good.
This one is caught.
There you go.
Wow, Dawson makes a great catch.
Spin, win, 3, bury it for Leland Walker.
Tie the game they do with the dunk by Malik Edmonds. What a play.
Oh, my
I
goodness.
feel a little momentum starting to fall Lynn's way.
That into the air. Wrestler! Whoa!
Your life is on the go. Now your viewing habits can be on the go. With the ISC Sports Network app, your team is at your fingertips. You can download years' worth of content from the ISC Sports Network library. High school, college, special events, weekly and monthly shows, wherever you find your favorite app. And you can always find out more information at iscsportsnetwork.com.
Hi, I'm Query.
And I'm Schultz.
And of course, we do the incredibly creatively and appropriately named Query and Schultz program every Monday on ISC Sports Network. Derek, it airs at what time?
7:30.
Okay, every Monday at 7:30. We're now on season number 2, and if history tells us anything, catch us now because you never know when they pull the plug on it.
Why would you say that?
Because it's happened
That's not going
before.
to happen here. Comcast, Xfinity 81, ISCSportsNetwork.com, ISC Sports Network, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, so many places to watch Query and Schultz, 7:30 on Monday.